Hey there guys, Moist Gaming's Forset here again along with Dark. So Dark, guess what Legion is bringing that everyone has been asking for?
Uh, Facebook and Snapchat integration?
Not yet, that's the 7.1 patch.
Then I have no idea.
Violet Hold is back with a vengeance. Now, I know a lot of people are probably very upset to hear this, but we promise the dungeon as a whole isn't shit. It's just the trash. The bosses here are some of the most fun that Legion has to offer.
The setup of Violet Hold is the same as before. There'll be random waves of trash and then a random boss following it. Repeat that twice and then add a final boss on the end. So we'll be listing the bosses from least fun to the most fun in our opinion. The boss that we think is probably the most annoying is Mind Flayer Karj. Throughout the fight, faceless tendrils will emerge from the void and mind flay a target for 16k shadow damage until they are killed. He'll also cast Shadow Crash, firing a missile at a random target that will deal 377k damage to all players at the impact point, knocking them away and leaving an energy field that lingers for 15 seconds, dealing 50k damage every second, reducing healing done by 50%. At the end of the duration, the field will collapse in on itself, pulling nearby players over 6 seconds and dealing 215k damage every second if they are caught within it. Karj will also cast Hysteria, causing a random player to be afflicted with a dispellable fear for 6 seconds. Luckily, this didn't seem to apply to tanks. And finally, Karj will periodically cast Doom on the tank, inflicting 754k shadow damage. Be ready with either a good magic damage reduction CD or a healing ability to counteract the spike damage, since it won't be mitigated by armor.
And up number 2 we have Maleficent Manastorm, wife of good old Millhouse Manastorm. During the fight, Maleficent will throw an Elementium bomb on the ground at a nearby player that will begin ticking down and deal 150,000 damage to everyone in the group if it blows up. However, the bomb can be disarmed to prevent it from blowing up. When the bomb blows up or you disarm it, really small mechanical squirrels will run out from the bomb and charge towards random players really fast. There's not a lot you can do about these, as the only thing you can really do to kill them off is just random AoE spells. The next ability she has is Thorium Rocket Chicken, where she will spawn a rocket chicken somewhere around the room. This chicken will use an ability called Rocket Chicken Rocket, which deals 200,000 fire damage to everyone in the direction that they're facing, and knocks anyone hit back. You can easily see where the rocket will travel by looking at the white shimmering line coming out of the chicken. It will also use Chicken Swarm rockets that fire rockets every 5 seconds at all players, dealing 50,000 damage. At around 50%, she will transition into phase 2 when, unfortunately, Millhouse insults her hair through. So, yeah. During this phase, most things are unchanged, with the only 2 differences are that the bombs will periodically release squirrels, regardless if they are disarmed or blown up, and the second change is that you will no longer be able to kill the rocket chickens, as they are protected by thorium plating. This will act like a pseudo enrage, as they will pile up quickly and then begin dealing huge periodic damage to everyone with swarm rockets. At around 5%, Maleficent will shrink herself down and run through the cracks at the bottom of the door to end the encounter.
Coming up third from the bottom for the greatest hits of Assault on Violet Hold is Festerface. Professor Putricide salvaged what was left of his hideously adorable children into the amalgamation that is Festerface. This fight is very easy that will have your DPS running around killing the 5 congealed goos that spawn from Festerface's congealing vomit ability, which deals 490k nature damage in a cone in front of him. The goos deal 43k nature damage every 2 seconds to all players as long as they are alive. However, the tank must drag Festerface to each defeated goo to consume them, and if they aren't eaten within 12 seconds, they will recongeal, so you don't want to kill them all at once. On heroic difficulty, Festerface has an energy bar that, when full, will cause him to cast spewing black bile, causing all healing and absorbs to be reduced by 100%. Luckily, the congealed goo that he will be consuming by doing the fight properly will remove 20 energy per goo from Festerface. This fight's pretty straightforward, but from the looks of it, doesn't seem like it's that much fun for the tank.
I tanked this boss, and I can agree, as basically the way it happens is you start tanking, and then he spawns the slimes, and then once your DPS start killing the slimes, he doesn't hit you for about 40 seconds. The most engaging tank mechanics I've ever known.
Dragging the boss to goo, and then waiting.
Up next, we have Anubis Set, Anubarak's long-lost uncle. This boss tends to be one of two things. Either stick to the intended mechanics, or the second way you can turn it into a huge Zerg fest if your damage is high enough. The first thing to look out for as the tank is his Mandible Strike ability, as after a short cast it will deal an absolute fuck ton of damage to you. Like, seriously, if you don't have a cooldown or active mitigation up, it probably will kill you outright. His next ability is Impale. He will turn to a random ranged target, and after a short cast, huge spikes will travel along the ground to where the player targeted is and deal 400,000 physical damage to anyone in the path or nearby, and also knock them into the air. And during the fight, he will use Cold Swarm to summon a bunch of spitting scarabs into the encounter area. These mobs just sit at a range and spam Poison Spit at random targets that deal 120k nature damage and leave a nasty dot on them afterwards. There are a lot of poison debuffs that go out, and if the scarabs live for a long time, they can play hell on the healers. So if you can dispel the poison every now and again, you do yourself a favour in the group and help dispel them. Heals will appreciate a lot. Though when it does come to the Zerg strat, you basically just ignore these mobs and tunnel the boss. And the last mechanic is the heroic mechanic, where blistering beetles will crawl out of the ground and fixate on a random target. When they reach their target or they die, they'll explode, creating a pool of blistering ooze. That, when players step into the pool of ooze, they will take 300,000 nature damage every 2 seconds and have reduced movement speed for 6 seconds. In all honesty, when it came to these, it was easier to just ignore them and just walk into them to pop them when they were away from melee, as taking the time out to deal damage to them just took it away from the boss and the other ads that needed way more attention. After that, it's pretty much a rinse and repeat of killing ads until the boss is dead.
Up next is Blood Princess Thilana, who is a minor twist on the Blood Queen fight from Icecrown Citadel. She will start off by biting one person with Vampire's Kiss and infusing them with Essence of the Blood Princess, which will double the player's damage, increase their leech by 10%, and reduce their threat generated by 100%. After a short period, the players that are affected must feed it on another player and spread the essence or they will become mind-controlled. Thilana also has an aura called Shroud of Sorrow that deals periodic damage to non-vampires and scales with the number of existing vampires in the fight. This mechanic just needs to be healed through and is pretty negligible. She will also hurl blood bolts at random targets, dealing moderate shadow damage and creating a pool of blood at her feet that deals ticking damage to anyone standing within it. Move her away from these pools as Thilana will summon congealed blood from them that will travel toward her. If they reach the Blood Princess, the party will take about 200k shadow damage and she will heal for about 8% of her maximum health. In our runs through Violet Hold, the healer got bit nearly every time. Ideally, you want your DPS to get bit first, starting with your highest outputter. We found that this fight has a really tight DPS requirement, otherwise your players will start to become mind controlled. Since our healer was a first person bit, we had them DPS as hard as they could in between healing to meet that rage requirement. I really enjoyed the fight mechanics, just the whole judging who's going to be bitten next to make sure we don't wipe to this boss and become all mind controlled.
Next up, we have the boss Shivermore, that in our opinion is the best boss by far in this dungeon. All his mechanics synergize well to make a fun but interesting boss encounter. Like all dragons in the World of Warcraft, you don't want to stand directly behind them as they will sweep you with their tail, knocking you back and dealing a pretty nasty amount of damage along with it. Sticking with the dragon theme, you also don't want to stand in front of her either, as she will cast Frost Breath on the tank that deals 300,000 frost damage every half a second for 3 seconds. That also puts a debuff on anyone hit that slows their movement speed by 10% per stack. Shivermore will cast Wing Buffet on the tank that deals 600k frost damage to anyone standing in front of her, and causing them a huge knockback. The easiest thing to do with this is to just put your back to a wall and you should be more than fine. She will also cast Relentless Storm, which causes huge comets to rain down over most of the encounter area, dealing 350,000 frost damage to anyone caught in the impact zone. The other thing this ability does is blankets the elevated areas in the Violet Hold in ice that deals 50k frost damage every half a second and slows anyone hit by 30%. This blanket of ice is an important part of the way the fight mechanics synergize with each other, as shortly after she will fly up into the air and cast Frigid Winds that cause all players to pulse 200k frost damage to anybody within 8 yards for 18 seconds. Once she flies into the air, she will throw down a huge ice bomb that detonates after 5 seconds. Anyone on the lower half of the prison when this bomb hits the ground will be frozen for 30 seconds or until the ice prison is destroyed. to deal with this clusterfuck of mechanics that kind of hit you all at once. What you want to do is split up into 2 or 3 groups, find an elevated area covered in a blanket of ice, don't stay too close together or the damage you pulse from the frigid winds will kill your allies. Then once you see the blanket of ice fade, simply run onto where it was until the ice bomb hits the ground and shove more flies back to the ground, then continue on with the fight until she is defeated. Like I said earlier, this fight is by far the most interesting and fun to do. What do you think of it, Doc?
I really enjoyed both DPSing this fight and taking it. We went through here several times, and I really loved how you can still take damage if you are caught in the ice block from Ice Bomb. So, if you really hate your pugs, you can kill them with Frost Breath if you're the tank.
Yeah, this fight was so much fun. Like, the first time we did this, we didn't really realize what was going on, and then everybody got encased in the ice. And then every other time we've done this, we're in a group and we go to the top and then everyone else gets frozen. It's really fun to watch.
You get the one random person like, why the hell is everyone running away? The boss is still targetable, and then they're frozen in the middle of the room.
It's the best.
After you're done killing the random 2 bosses from the 6 that we just listed, along with some more ways to trash, you get not 1, but 2 final bosses that will randomly spawn. First one that we thought was pretty much more annoying than the other is Fel Lord Betrug, who is a miniature version of Zakuun from Hellfire Citadel minus the pillars. To start off with, he will target a random player with chaotic energy, inflicting fire damage to all enemies within 5 yards of the target. Betrug will also turn to a random player and cast Fel Slash, striking a conical area, dealing 980k fire damage to all players in the said area. Betrug will also choose 2 targets and inflict them with Seed of Destruction, causing them to emit 4 wakes of destruction from their location after 8 seconds. Players come into contact with the waves, they will explode and deal 840k shadow damage to players within 3 yards. The waves always travel out in the same 4 cardinal directions, so just have the seated players stand away from each other and misalign so dodging will not be an issue. Finally, Betrug will cast Mighty Smash, throwing all players in the room to the entrance of Violet Hold, and choosing 1 player to be executed up on the raised platform on the opposite side of the room. They will be shackled by 2 columns that root the player in place, and if the player is not freed within 20 seconds, Fel Lord Betrug will execute them and they will die instantly. Most immunes do not work for this and will not save the players. If your DPS is not high enough, most of your time on this fight will be spent running from the entrance and up the stairs to keep people from dying to execution. This fight is, it starts off fun and then you quickly realize, like, oh, we're running marathons over and over to save someone. Well, I didn't think it was a terrible final dungeon boss. I just felt it was kind of annoying between, like, huge amounts of, like, AoE spike damage that could be cast out, and then they're running back and forth to save someone.
Yeah, that's overall it's a decent fight to take part in, but the fact that he does the smash that knocks you back to the entrance and you have to run the marathon, it comes in so quickly that you probably get about 30 seconds of uptime on him before he sends you back to the start of the room, and you'll probably do this 5 times at least.
Or longer if people don't know how to survive waves or spread.
Yeah, it can be pretty terrible sometimes.
He gives enough time at the beginning of the fight to cycle through all his abilities and kill half your dungeon group that aren't paying attention. And then you're stuck doing it on your own.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this was that, maybe I'm just, like, being dumb when I think about it like this, but I always felt like it took a very long time before he used the first one, but then after that, he uses it, like, a ton more frequently.
Yeah, it seems like if there's a timer attached to it, it starts whenever he is starting to cast execution and not whenever he either casts it or cancels it.
And the second of the 2 possible last bosses of this dungeon is a Kerrigan lookalike that enjoys poisons and spoders. Near the start of the fight, she will summon a phase spider that will fixate on a random player and slowly move towards them. All you need to do when they fixate on you is face your character directly at them to stop them from advancing towards you. As the fight goes on and more of these phase spiders spawn, multiple can fixate on you at once, which can be a little tricky to deal with, but you can finagle your way around to always be facing them. The other ability she will cast is Toxic Blood, that will target a random player and cause them to post 130,000 nature damage to nearby players every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds, as well as also casting a nasty poison breath called Venom Spray, dealing 170,000 nature damage to anyone within a frontal cone of her, which leaves behind a poison dot that ticks for 12 seconds. The last thing for this fight to watch out for is a nasty combo that she likes to do, which is to pull all players into a hitbox with web grab. This is also bad because it messes with your positioning if you were facing a spider that was fixated on you, so reposition yourself if needed. However, she will then cast Fell Detonation on a random player, which deals 250,000 fire damage to all nearby allies. If everyone is grouped up from the web grab, this can be pretty nasty, so long as you keep the spiders in check and spread out after a web grab to minimize the AoE damage that goes out on this fight. She's a relatively easy but very fun boss.
The phase spider mechanic seems like it would be really annoying for casters if they spawn in the wrong direction, but as melee it was really easy to handle until someone just ignored it and let the space spiders get into melee range, and then you can't really tell who's targeting who because everyone's in a huge clusterfuck. Next thing you know, some melee drops dead because they can't tell when they're getting targeted since it's basically on top of them already.
Yeah, so long as you pay attention on this fight, it's a very easy one to pull off, but it's also very fun because all of the mechanics are like interesting. So other than the bosses, Doc, what did you think about the dungeon?
Other than the bosses, like, hey, let's list all the terrible things that are still Violet Hold, like waves of enemies spawning that you can't really stop. Guys, don't worry, we put some lighting effects in Violet Hold, keeping in line with Blizzard's idea of rehashing content. Violet Hold is back with now a shadow filter on it.
While the bosses were extremely fun, I definitely do not like the trash. It's so bad. And the worst part is that if you happen to have a bad pull or someone disconnects, like your healer, someone pretty important, and you have to wait for another healer to requeue, the portals do not stop spawning. And with that, ads will continually pour out of the portals, and your only option is to sit there while waiting in queue, killing one mob at a time every 30 seconds. Or multiple if there's more portals than one up, which they will continue spawning after a certain amount of time has passed. And that's not great. Like, I don't like that. One thing that was interesting, actually, that I just remembered is there was the switches that you used to kill ads along the walls. That was from the original Violet Hold. I don't think we ever actually tried to use them on the ads, but we did try and use them on Mind Flayer because we thought maybe we could use those to like tone down all of the Mind Flayer tentacle things that he'd spawned. However, nothing really happened when we did use it. But they're there, so maybe you can kill trash with them.
I'm willing to bet that it's just a layover of the coding from the old Violet Hold with the Icarus boss. Or whatever it is. Just never removed it. Yeah, that's all there's to mention about Violet Hold. It's the same fucking room. This time it's green instead of purple.
So this has been another Moist Gaming Guide. If you guys enjoyed it, throw us a like, leave a comment, and maybe hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time.